Hi everyone, thanks for being with me. I watched a documentary from Al Jazeera just the other day, and at the end of that video, I found myself hating, and I hate to say this, hating Israel. Now, the reason why I found myself so emotionally invested in this particular video was that it was graphic, it was it was in my view honest, and it told another side to a story which most of us believe at some level, at an intellectual level, that this is a war which is focused on destroying the Palestinians, not so much an effort to destroy Hamas. And as I was watching this video, and I'll play a small excerpt from it for you in a moment. I felt more and more contempt for the Australian government, United States government, the UK government, for siding with an organisation, namely the IDF or the Israeli government, in a way which supports the genocide and the murder of innocent people. Now, I need to say at the outset that this is not about being anti-Semitic. This is about identifying a government, a political force, and a combative force, as in the army or the forces, finding ways to completely destroy and annihilate another group of people. Now, there may be people that may object to this and suggest that it is anti-Semitic. It's got nothing to do with the Jewish people whatsoever. In fact, there are some traditional Jewish people who are supportive of the Palestinian plight and who would like to see a two-state solution. And there are lots of Jewish people who are pacifists, who are appalled at what the Israeli government is doing. The Israeli government isn't necessarily their government. You know, it's a bit like saying here in Australia that the Labor government may not be our government if we're extremely conservative and we're right-wing or whatever the case might be. The same applies in Israel. Netanyahu is a terrible, terrible, disgusting human being. But in Australia, there are people that do want to support him. And one of those is Sharri Markson. Now, I personally think that Sharri Markson is a repulsive human being, but nevertheless, she gets a lot of time to promote a certain amount of crap on Sky News. And I'm about to show you one of these craps that she's talking about, which is about this very issue, about Israel and fighting the Palestinians and how wonderful Netanyahu is in terms of the speech that he gave at the United Nations last week and so on, and to the praise that you see coming from Sharri in relation to him. Now, it needs to be acknowledged that I'm not sure whether Sharri is Jewish or not. I know, though, that she comes from a Jewish family, so she has some sympathy towards the Jewish people. But there again, so do I. What I don't have any sympathy for is the complete destruction of a human race, such as the Palestinians, and the way that it's been gone about in Gaza and the West Bank for that matter, and now what's happening in Lebanon. However, Sharri seems to think that Benjamin Netanyahu is the most wonderful person who gives the greatest oratory, who has so much sense and logic and reasoning and so forth, because he is fighting for the things that are important to Jewish people. Well, he isn't. He's fighting for things that are important to his own political survival, and at the end of the day, he will be called out, as he has by the International Criminal Court, for some of the things that he has done, and so will so many other people who are in the IDF at this particular point. And the investigation by Al Jazeera actually highlights that very point. So I'll play a little bit. I don't want to play too much of Sherry because I don't like giving her too much time, but I'll play a little bit of what she has to say, and then you can make your own assessment accordingly.
All right, well, let's be utterly clear. The elimination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah is a major coup for Israel. It should be celebrated by all who oppose terrorism and value freedom and democracy. This is one of the...
Now, I'm not going to argue for a moment that there aren't bad players. There are. But, you know, when I think about it, I tend to think of it in terms of the possibility that there are bad players on both sides. And I think when you're going to criticise, or when you're celebrating, in this case, the killing of the leader of Hezbollah, then clearly, you know, you must also be thinking, well, you know, are there people that on our side that are doing just as horrific things? And there certainly are. And Benjamin Netanyahu is one of those. Now, I'm not going to suggest for a moment that the killing of any terrorist is a bad thing. Even though I am a pacifist, I don't think the killing of anybody at the end of the day is extremely helpful. But nevertheless, this is what Shari is celebrating in this particular clip.
For many reasons, Israel also deserves the support of all Australians at its hour of need. Well, on Friday...
No, they don't. And they're certainly not going to get support of a certain number of Australians who are not anti-Semitic, but who are certainly fighting for the rights of Palestinians simply to exist.
Yet again, Israel outwitted its enemies. The strategy behind the execution of Nasrallah showed sheer brilliance. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu signed off on the hit from his hotel room, as you can see in this picture. Moments later, he walked into the hostile halls of the United Nations to deliver a speech for the ages. It was the most important oration that fraudulent body, the UN, has heard since the war began. And as he delivered the speech, with his ominous warning for the Iranian-backed terror groups that Israel is winning, well, Nasrallah sat in his basement in Beirut, watching on. Unbeknownst to the terror leader, missiles shrieked across the sky and blasted the Hezbollah quarters where he was bunkered down, ending his 32-year reign of terror.
Now, Sherry goes on to, I mean, she says a lot of things there that I find obnoxious. The United Nations, to some extent, certainly is a toothless tiger, I agree, but it does have the ability to be able to provide a voice for the nations to talk about the issues that matter to them. And certainly through the United Nations, we have some understanding as to how people are thinking about certain issues which, for most of us, are important, and also to move resolutions that present a united front often about the state of the world and how things should be changed, not to mention the fact that the United Nations provides, you know, UNICEF, children's funds, World Health Organisations, and a whole host of myriad other organisations that do a lot of good in this world. So let's not forget that. But of course, Sherry wouldn't be aware of that because she's just a moron. But nevertheless, there have been a different way of viewing this war. And I'm going to show you now a clip which, if you have a chance, have a look at Al Jazeera's investigation into Gaza. It's a video. Of course, I can't show you the whole lot, but and I'll put a description of it down below so you can find it on YouTube. But it is certainly a wonderful and distressing insight into the behaviour of the soldiers. So we talk about the behaviour of the soldiers that entered on the 7th of October last year. We were horrified by what they did. But when you have a look also at what the IDF soldiers are doing, the behaviour is also unbelievably horrific and abusive. And the torture and the type of torture that they're doing is just inhumane. But no one seems to talk about that because most people think like Shari does. And because they have got their head buried in the sand, they don't see the true problems that are happening in Gaza and the intent, the final outcome, which is the complete destruction of Palestinians, and the way that they're going about it in Gaza, or the way the IDF are going about it in Gaza, is particularly horrific. And I would suggest all of you to have a look at that because it is horrible. So I'll just play this little segment here and then talk about this.
Do you know anything about that? What can you report at this stage? All right. Yumna, please take cover.
We knew that this or the retaliation is going to be so much bigger than before. This is a missile attack on Palestine Tower, right in the middle of Gaza City.
Yumna, take a moment to breathe.
But we didn't expect it,
Take a moment to breathe.
in no means, to be what it has turned out to be. The fact that there are Israeli captives in the strip, wouldn't that be a red line for Israel, that it would be afraid for its captives? Even if Israel wanted to cross these red lines, we thought for sure that the world would stand and say no.
You wake up every morning thinking that this would be actually your last day. You know, you might be next. There have been journalists and human rights workers who have been directly killed during the previous attacks. But this war, it was more like systematic attacks, systematic targeting of civilians, of journalists, of human rights workers. So it's been a struggle since the beginning of this war, realizing that what you're doing is actually not only risking your own life, but the life of your family, the lives of those taking shelter with you, everyone who you could be around.
كان تم استهداف بيوت حوالينا بدون سابق إنذار، كانت تم قصفها فوق رؤوس ساكنيها. أنا رب الأسرة إنه أكون أنا اللي قدر الإمكان كنت.
So what we have there, I think, are the faces and the voices of the people whom people like Shari actually hate. These are, we lose sight of the fact, I think, that there are people living in Gaza who are not Hamas, who don't want anything to do with the politics, who simply want to live their lives as best as they can. And we must also remember that this is one of the most populated places on this planet, and that, you know, if they're going to build military bases, of course they're going to be under the city, because you don't build those sort of places, as neither does the United States or any developed country for that matter, build places that are important strategically unless they're underground. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. But the point is that Marx and others, and particularly people on the extreme right, don't seem to understand nor even talk about the number of deaths of women and children. I don't even know why we don't talk about the deaths of men. Just the deaths of people. There's over 40,000 people who have died, and that's not including the many tens of thousands that are still kept under the rubble and haven't been able to be excavated because people just can't get there and do their job. So at the beginning of this, I said, I hate Israel. You know, I don't really hate anybody, never really have. But I can't believe, I get upset when I hear people like Sherry Markson and Andrew Bolt and the other ones on Sky News or any right-wing person justify what's happening in Gaza. And now we have the same situation again happening in Lebanon. And, you know, at the end of the day, we could say, well, you know, perhaps the Israelis did us all a favour by getting rid of some of these terrorist groups. But then maybe, you know, at some particular point, we should be saying, well, maybe there is a way, as there used to be, of these different peoples with different views and different religious backgrounds, of simply finding a way to live together in peace. And I wonder, whatever happened to that? So let me know what you think in the comment section below. I have now made a policy that if anybody says anything that is abusive, they simply will be deleted. I'm happy to hear from you if you're going to make a comment that is constructive and helpful and adds something to the debate, which doesn't mean you have to agree with anything that I say, but at least puts a perspective that is not abusive. So let me know what you think in the comment section below and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Thanks everybody for being here. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.